Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our issue 33 Winter 2022 launch. So I am delighted to be here. We are launching before the issue comes out. It is production delays have been insane this time around. But we are going ahead and launching anyway, and we have the issue available on pre-order, and you can save $2 when you buy it on pre-order. So that's a good deal. And you'll just have to wait a little bit longer to actually read the stories that you're going to hear snippets of today. First of all, I just like to say I'm here in Langley on the traditional territory of the Kwantlen First Nation, and it is a beautiful day here in Langley. I would like to thank all of our authors who are coming from around the country and around the continent, and I think possibly even from around the world, and all our readers as well. And thank you for coming to listen to us today. And we hope to make your Saturday morning or evening or whatever it is a little more fun and a little more literary. So our first guest today is Kate Heartfield. And Kate is our feature author for this issue. She's the author of The Embroidered Book, which is coming out, apparently it's coming out in February in the UK, but we have to wait until May here in Canada. But I'm sure you're going to want to pre-order that so that you can get your hands on it. Kate is a wonderful author, and I discovered her when I was reading one of our other Canadian literary magazines on Spec. She had a fabulous story in there, and I thought, I love this story so much. I wish we'd bought it. I wish we'd seen it first. So I approached her and said, do you have anything else? So welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And it's such a privilege to be in the magazine and have a story in it that is unusual for me and something that stretched me a little bit. So I was really happy to do that.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about this story? I mean, as much as you want to tell before you read it, but what inspired it?
Yeah, so it's called And in the Arcade Ego, which is a historical pun on a very old phrase, et in Arcadia ego. It's a space pinball story. So it's about people playing pinball in microgravity with their bodies. And so it's set in the far future, and there's sort of a theocracy behind it that's oppressing everyone in that part of the universe.
I got to say, I mean, I love the concept of space pinball. I played a fair bit of pinball in my youth. There's not many science fiction things that I read and it's like, I want to do that, but I want to play space pinball. One of the other things I want to do is, ride a dragon on Pern and things like that. But, and now space pinball is added to that impossible bucket list.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
All right, let's, why don't you give us a little snippet from this?
Sure. All right. And in the Arcade Ego. Luce torches the Fugax right after we roll out of it, before I even hit the floor of the landing bay. She lights it up like an offering with one of her chemical grenades, holding onto a bay grip with one hand, and kicks the speedcraft, all sparking and spinning out into space. I cringe when it explodes. The smoothest ride around, so pretty and sleek, worth more denarii than I'll make in my lifetime. But Luce just pumps one fist as the Fugax silently pops, and all that's left is the sparkling, expanding blue sphere. Must be weird to be rich. Not that it was ours to begin with, but just once I'd like to keep one of the things that we steal long enough to sell it. She can't see me rolling my eyes inside my helmet, but I do it anyway as I start climbing the grips up to the airlock. Luce is still laughing when we scramble up into the station and take our helmets off. I'm your tight friend, she says. It's my job to make you do things you don't want to do. When else do you get to have this kind of sin? Pretty well never is the answer to that. Life is going to be grim for a while. That's what I'm thinking at this point. Everything I make from my cleaning job goes to pay my dad's indulgence debt and my brother's prison keep, neither of which are shrinking. If I can't make rent this month, I'll have to beg mercy. Ask the Concilium to put me to work doing something I don't want to think about. Doing its dirty work on the prison stations or helping them put people there. It's that or starve to death, or martyrdom, as the posters call it. Make myself useful in heaven since I can't be useful here. It's different for Luz. She could get denarii from her father if she wanted it, but she's always trying to prove that she doesn't want it. Always trying to show that nobody owns her. Like I say, must be weird to be rich. Luz said she knew a way to get denarii and poke the Concilium in the eye. She was right about one thing. That Deacon's Fugax was no trouble at all to nab. I thought we were way out here to sell it, but she has something else in mind. The arcade. I should have known. The only place where we can make really serious denarii in a hurry. You have to go pretty far from the core of the system to find any sin these days. The only arcade left is in a beaten-up old station right at the fringe of Concilium space, with nothing but void beyond it as far as you can get. And now we're here with no way off since Luz burned the ship. To be fair, it probably had a tracer in it, but also, Luz just really likes to blow things up. The airlock is cramped and smells like my brother's old locker back home. We're the only ones here, just us and the Praseed bots, and they sniff for weapons but don't ask questions. Luz doesn't have any more explosives on her, I guess, or the ones she has don't set off the bots. I wish I could see the looks on those deacons' faces when they realize what we did, she says. Sure, but they're going to figure out eventually that we ended up here. There's no other station in this direction. Eventually, Tamara, she says, patting my shoulder. Eventually. That's pretty well 3 games of pinball. Well, 3 for me, 5 for you, Brainy. Heaven help me if she ever figures out I have a Shakespearean scale for her moods. At her best, Luz is Prince Hal, and I'm okay with being Falstaff. At the moment, though, she's gone full Mercutio, which is too bad for me. Being Benvolio is no fun at all. We're friends, see? We're that kind of friends. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I love the Shakespearean scale. I mean, it just ties in so nicely with the title and the theme. So I think I'm going to start using Shakespearean scales for people. So I wanted to just ask you, like, what's your writing process like? How do you come up with an idea, and how do you turn it into a story? And
I often have a kind of running ideas file on the go. I send myself emails at all hours of the night and, have things that I put there. And then if they still appeal to me when I have time, then I'll come back to them. So I'm always writing a novel in the background. So I typically have a long-term project on the go, but then in between drafts, I like to write short fiction, to try to kind of, a change is as good as a rest sometimes for the brain, and to stretch a little bit, because a novel, eats up so much of your life for years sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you have like a favorite writing space, or like how do you
it's where I am right now. So this is where I write. So with all my books around, and I'm lucky that I have a little room in the house where I can go, and the door shuts, although it has glass doors, so it doesn't keep out my kid entirely, but close enough.
Well, that's probably good for a supervisory aspect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm aware if there is emergencies, so yeah, that's it.
Well, it's cool to see where the magic happens, and
indeed.
And so Mel, did you have any questions for Kate?
I just love that. Did you initially picture Mercutio at Space Pinball? Because that just works so beautifully.
Yeah. I mean, he's a character that really fascinates me, and I have a little niggle in the back of my brain that I want to write more about Mercutio, because especially the Mercutio as portrayed in the 1968 Romeo and Juliet film is such a nuanced and dark and interesting character. So that sort of edge of danger of being, so happy that you're dangerous, I think is something that I really wanted to kind of explore in the story. And that moment where, being alive requires accepting the possibility of death kind of thing, and that interplay between the two.
Yeah, I love Mercutio. I was more sad in Romeo and Juliet when Mercutio dies than when either Romeo or Juliet dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wouldn't, I couldn't care less about the play without him. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd love to read that because you also write you write a lot about sword fighters. So part of the way I discovered you too is because your Twitter header had an image that I was familiar with. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So the header in my Twitter is a picture of a duel between Madame d'Eon, the Chevalier d'Eon, who was a spy who lived in England, but spied for France and then fought with France and had a whole storied career. And she fought a duel with the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, who was this incredible composer and fencer. And so the two of them, in I think it was, I can't remember the exact year, it was sometime in the 1780s, fought this duel in London, and the Prince of Wales was there. And so it's a drawing of that duel. And I love it for many reasons, partly because those two characters appeal to me so much. And they're actually both in The Embroidered Book, which is the novel that I have coming out this spring. And also I just love the fact that we have this image of a Black man and a trans woman. At least that's my interpretation of her identity. And fighting a duel, which just goes to show that, there's so many people who don't get written about enough in history, and I certainly didn't learn about them growing up. And so I just kind of have them there as a reminder to myself of how wonderful history is, and these characters that just were so cool and so interesting and so brave in so many ways. So yeah.
History is way more diverse than we were taught in school, I think.
Yeah. European history is certainly not all white, cis, straight people, and the more we can remind ourselves of that, the better, I think.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for reading. Thank you for that story. It's an absolute delight. And for those who want to pre-order a copy, I've put the link up in the chat on YouTube, and you'll find it in the Discord as well. So do stay around in Discord, chat with your fans, and we'll all, at the end of the launch, we all head over to Discord for a little more, more private chat that's not being streamed. So hopefully you can stay around that long.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love that story.
Oh, I know. Me too. I was so thrilled when it came through our inbox.
Publishing, yeah.
So Mel, you are up next.
Awesome.
And
thanks.
And I'm just going to bring up your slide here.
The slides are fabulous, Jen.
This is what happens when you're
Nice.
This is what happens when you have insomnia. It's like, okay, I'm going to do some slides and they'll create nice prompts for the launch. And there we go.
Wow.
Just, I love that story background that we had for the launch card. So I just wanted to use it over and over again.
Sure.
So most of our listeners know that Mel does, the lion's share of illustration in the magazine. Most of the illustrations you see are by Mel. And it would not be the magazine it is without those gorgeous pen and ink drawings.
Nice of you to say. I love doing them because I love the stories.
Yeah.
It's a great privilege.
So all of these illustrations, with the today that you're going to see, with the exception of the graphic novel, which I just have a little screenshot of, are by Mel.
And the cover is not
this cover is not. No, this. But this black and white illustration, this gorgeous rowboat on House Sound is a very striking and moody image to go with Pretty Lies, Eyes of Full Moon. So this is a novel that you wrote years ago and have been revamping, and we published the first couple of chapters last issue, and then there's a couple more chapters in this issue. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
This is a very fun story to write because there's so much creepiness in it to start with, and it takes place on Bowen Island, where I live, and where I've had a lot of fun over the years.
Oops.
In a summer camp in the golden summer of 1974, where the counselors are running a camp for boys, but the main character is Jenny, who has just lost her no-good boyfriend to a car accident and is trying to get sane when ghosts begin appearing, and in Moira's case, walking straight across the water and making life extremely confusing and death something of an unwanted option. So Pretty Lies, Eyes Full of Moon. Chapter 1 of this section, the second section, takes place in House Sound, 1974. Malcolm Lee is one of the counselors, interacting with the very strange, haunted Jenny Riley. Malcolm Lee dropped his hand, and the green Ford Galaxy sped by with Jenny Riley at the wheel. She didn't wave back, which came as no surprise. He swung the bag of marshmallows at his side, thankful to be young, employed, and unloved by any woman. That Jenny's worth knowing. Adrian pulled up his yellow shirt and slapped at an insect on his chest. He missed. Bloody hands and a mysterious way about her. I think I'm in love. I know where she lives. I saw her house. A skinny kid named Ketchup followed this announcement with kissy noises. Adrian gave him a barbecue chip and he subsided. In love. Be my guest. Malcolm kicked a cluster of white everlasting at the side of the road. He and Adrian had been friends since childhood, and these days he had to work hard not to hate him. Anyway, the only thing you love is shut up. Adrian shot him a deadly look and then laughed. Poor Malcolm. Do you want to know what love is, Malcolm? Do you want to know the secret? Malcolm looked away. There is no secret. It's all on TV. The secret is that love is all around. Look, over there. Love is an alder tree, male and female in the same plant. Tie a can to it, Malcolm said without hope. Adrian pointed at a stand of evergreens. Love is a small brown bird twittering in a tree. Love is pine cones with their dark seed pods no man has ever seen. Look around you, Malcolm, because here are the most beautiful fruits of love, these horrible children in yellow shirts. That's what love produces. Malcolm snatched up an alder branch from the side of the road and snapped off the twigs, then cursed as someone stepped on the heel of his shoe. He turned to find Ketchup at his back. Ketchup wrestled the stick away from him and ran off, whacking the salmonberry bushes. Get off the road, Malcolm shouted. Ketchup stuck out his thumb and at a pickup. It rolled by him. You can't protect them, Adrian said. It's impossible. It's literally our job, Adrian. Well, then we're earning money for nothing. What a happy thought. To celebrate, I'm going to go into the woods for a pee. I'm coming too, Ketchup called, waving his stick and nearly taking out the eye of the kid on his right. Adrian said over his shoulder, No, you'll pee out your cabin window the way God intended. Malcolm watched him go. He switched the bag of marshmallows to the hand farthest from the kids and jerked the stick away from Ketchup. He threw it towards the trail Adrian had taken in the woods. Adrian wasn't going for a pee. You can't protect them. He pushed the thought away. Instead, he considered his encounters with Jenny Riley, yesterday on the ferry, and today in the store. He thought about her gray eyes, warm when they looked at you, sad when they looked away, and how the wind had caught her long brown hair as she stood on the ferry deck and gazed out to sea. I'll stop there before the arrival of the next ghost.
So great, Mel. I love that book. I mean, I loved it when you gave me a draft to read so many years ago, and I love it even more now that it's become an adult rather than a young adult book. But that discussion of love, love is an alder tree. It's like, yeah, but look at what love produces. And I love how very unsentimental you are about the kids, those kids in the camp. Like it's, that's a slice of reality right there.
I did run summer camps long ago, and I just love kids.
Yeah. Well, as
They're original thinkers.
many years as a teacher too, kids. and all their personalities are so great. And the contrast, between Adrian and Malcolm, and it's so rich and so beautifully observed.
That's really kind. Thank you. Makes me want to keep typing.
So I'm just waiting for Ann Baldo to show up here, but I think this would be a good time.
Prize draw.
I see her backstage there. So I'm still going to do a prize draw. So for people who haven't already done so, do go into the Discord server. Do put your name down in the prize draw. And I noticed some people are, we've got some strange numbering going on. So maybe I'm going to roll the dice, and Brooklyn is going to sort out the numbering backstage. So I'm just gonna do a random call, and then Brooklyn is going to let me know who should win this prize. And let's talk about which prize is it? Let's see. So the first door prize we're giving away is an ebook copy of issue 33.
It's such a great issue.
And it is number 5. I'm going to, and number 5 is Lulu. And now Lulu, you're an author, so you will actually be getting the ebook. You've already got the PDF proof. So if you have somebody you want us to send it to, please let us know, and you can send a free ebook to one of your family or friends. And let me bring on Ann Baldo. Hi, Ann.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet everybody.
Oh, it's just, I hate the pandemic. I hate the fact we can't do live launches in person, but I just love the fact that we can get to have readings from people who otherwise would not be able to get all the way over to Vancouver.
Yeah, that's true.
It's absolutely delightful. So, Anne, your first collection of short fiction is coming out from Porcupine's Quill. What do you have a name for that yet?
Originally it was called Morse Code for Romantics, the title of one of the stories, but I don't know. I always like to switch the titles. I try to switch this title too, but right. I'm glad I stuck with this title.
Oh, okay. And do you know when that's coming out?
It's kind of in the early stages right now, so maybe next autumn, next spring, kind of depending.
All right. So in the meantime, we'll just have to look at some of your other previously published fiction, including in the magazine, but you've got stuff in Hermine, Carousel, Subterrane, magazines like that. So it's out there. Let me just bring up the next slide. So what we have in this issue, we have paper, candles, hearts, and other combustible materials. Oh, and look, my slide cut that off. I'm so sorry about that. That's materials with an S and an L at the end. So I've got to say, Anne, your titles are awesome.
Thank you.
And that was probably what drew us to the story first, but it's a really interesting story with flipping points of view, which is hard to pull off, and you do it really well. Do you want to tell us a bit about the story?
Sure. I was reading a newspaper article one night at about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I don't know why I was up. And it was about a restaurant that had burned down. And in the comments, everyone had like their 2 cents about it, right? And at what point somebody said, well, everybody knows it was the owner's wife's boyfriend who burned it down. And I thought that's such a wild accusation, and probably not true. I don't know about this fire, but that just kind of got me thinking. And that's where I got this story from.
Oh, cool. It's nice. Yeah, that I don't blame you for writing a story about that. It's like, yeah, what is the story behind this, and is it true?
I really wanted to know, but obviously that never came out. But
so, well, you just had to make it up yourself, right?
Yeah.
All right. Can you give us a little bit from the story?
Sure. Thank you. I'll just bring it up here. Okay. When Franco sees the front page of the paper, he thinks, of course, Jules would wear something like that to burn a place down. Yellow hoodie, a snake on the back, blood red roses on the sleeves. It is Jules for sure in the photograph taken from surveillance footage, even with its gritty quality. Murky like the tabloid snaps people used to claim were the Loch Ness Monster, or Elvis eating pancakes in a roadside diner. Jules under the headline, OPP releases image of suspect in restaurant fire. Franco doesn't have to pick up the phone, make the call. If anyone has information, please contact. But he will. He does. He wants to be the one. Cedar can't sleep. The hotel room is so cold it hurts. Franco over dinner earlier at the casino steakhouse, knife half sunk in a slab of charred octopus, a thorny salad on the side, saying, maybe you need to see a doctor. But Cedar had. The doctor and his clean, even nails, medicinal cologne, bloodroot, and crushed aspirin, flicking a prescription slip, his eyes never leaving the screen of the laptop as he quickly clicked the keys. A bottle of pills, take twice daily for nerves. She swallowed them for a week and hated them. The way they muddled her, left her sluggish and damp. So stunned, she couldn't catch her own thoughts long enough to dwell on anything. They lumbered slowly on, like drowsy sheep, but just ahead of her always, leaving her mind a flat, empty field. A void is not peace, and nothingness is not the same as happiness. She threw the pills out. Because you always want the quick fix, Franco says. At the steakhouse, Cedar orders macaroni and cheese. You could try the baked escargot. No, Cedar says. It's like chewing on someone's used gum. Franco shrugs into his rye. Now Franco is asleep in their hotel room, television on. The blue light flickers over the back, neck, and shoulder blades, committed to memory years ago. Years ago, they would both be awake, watching Attack of the Giant Leeches, or Atom Age Vampire, or Cedar's favorite, The Reptile. The cold-blooded curse of the girl in the film, a village maid, a doctor's daughter. At dusk, she'd shed her dress and skin for scales. Cedar hasn't really thought about that story in a long time, and now she wants to be her, shifting from girl to monster, sliding in and out of her corset, ever unsuspected, sinking teeth deep into throats. Cedar stands by the windows overlooking Riverside Drive, the reflection of Detroit's luminous skyline, Cadillac Tower, the Fisher Building, 1 Woodward Avenue, shining in the river. She looks east to see if she can glimpse Franco's restaurant, Arrivederci. Though it would be closed now anyway, she sees nothing but the shingle collage of rooftops, dark blotches of trees, and the sky in the east notched with a strange and searing light.
Muted. That was great. It's lovely the way you switch voices, and you can tell which point of view you're in without you putting on any accents or changing how you read. It's just the written word carries the voice so well.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot, and that's a relief because I can't do accents. So thank you.
And generally you shouldn't do accents.
No, you should.
Unless
I'm not a voice actor.
Unless you're really good at it.
Okay.
I was once at the Surrey Writing Conference. I listened to Jack White go through almost all the accents of the British Isles, and he did it beautifully. It's like,
Right.
somebody like that can do it, but yeah,
No,
I
that's
wouldn't
not.
attempt it. But you don't need to, right? And
That's good.
this is actually a good point for new writers out there. If you're tempted to write accents into your dialogue, don't. You can convey with word choice. You don't have to, put a lot of weird, contractions and accent indicators in, because that generally makes the reader stumble. So and you don't, you just do it with their word choices, with with their interior thoughts, and it makes these completely different and very clear voices to carry the story. So well done.
Thank you so much.
So with your short story in the works, your short story collection in the works, what are you working on now?
I'm still kind of like, I don't know, maybe you're not supposed to do this, but I feel like I'm still editing them a little bit on my own, and I talked to the editor, and obviously like whatever she goes with in the end is good, but it's hard for me to kind of stop tweaking them, just even like little things like the commas or whatever, and mostly just that right now, kind of obsessing over that.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. And I mean, so publishing has changed, right? It's, because you can change ebook versions so quickly. It's fairly easy to make last minute changes, even if you're going through a traditional publisher. So I think a lot more of that happens. It's not like it's gone to the printing press and somebody has laboriously hand set all those letters.
No, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. So I guess I can still put the commas a bit.
You can still tinker. Yeah. And what would you say your inspirations are?
I love reading. So I'm always reading something. I read a lot of Canadian short fiction lately. I just finished We Want What We Want by Alex Olin. It was really good. And Vanishing by Deborah Willis. I'm a big Deborah Willis fan. So I think just seeing what they do with language, just very exciting for me.
Yeah, those are some good reading suggestions, actually.
Excellent. I love Deborah Willis. I'm a huge Deborah Willis fan. So if anyone hasn't checked her out, I would recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that reading, and thank you for coming on all the way from back east, and I hope you're staying warm out there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be a part of this, so I appreciate that.
All right. So we hope to see you backstage at the end of the show. And I'm going to bring Brooklyn on. So I said we'd have some surprise guests. So Brooklyn Hook is one of our editors. And if you've been to previous launches, you've probably met her backstage. She's usually managing the backstage area. But today, we thought we'd bring some of our editors on to read little snippets, not as long sections, but just from the I'm losing my voice here. Just from stories that authors couldn't be here. So let me just bring this on and go to the next slide. And before we get to the story that Brooklyn's going to read, I just wanted to mention the one thing we're not going to read from is the poetry, because reading poetry is a talent that I don't possess and we don't want to take on. So Kara Waterfall is a Canadian poet, and she's been shortlisted and honorably mentioned before in the Magpie Award for Poetry, and her poem this year was the Magpie honorable mention, and it's Vessel. Sometimes with honorable mentions, we can't fit them in the issue that we fit the winner in, so we just pay regular rates for them, stories or poems, and put them in a subsequent issue. But I do want to mention, check out the issue for this wonderful poem, Vessel. There's some lines in it which just like they're just right in the heart, and right in the gut too. So please do check out that wonderful poem. And then while I'm speaking about contests, I just need to remind you that the Bumblebee Flash Fiction Contest is currently open and is closing on February 15th. So you've got a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks should be all you need to write. It's 750 words or less, or fewer. So you don't have to write much, but make it short and sweet and with a punch, and you could enter to win $300 and publication in the magazine. And you can find that at pulpliterature.com/contests. And so, first of all, let me just remove this. So, Brooklyn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I am an assistant editor with Pulp, and in my day job, I'm a caseworker at a halfway house. So I work a lot with people in the community and helping them kind of reintegrate into the community, actually. So this is, and it's funny. There's a lot of creative writers that are that come out of the situation as well, like in the institutions and things like that. So it's I get a lot of inspiration from my work as well in my own writing, and yeah.
Well, that's awesome, and I've heard some of your writing, and it is wonderful. And I hope that someday we'll actually be able to see some of your stuff in print. So you're going to read from Kimberly Aslet's short story. Let me just bring that one back. So this was also an honorable mention, and it was an honorable mention in the Bumblebee Flash Fiction Contest. And again, we published the winners in the summer. We didn't have room for a couple of the honorable mentions, so they're appearing now. And we get honorable mentions because the judge just really can't decide on the winner. We only ask Bob Thurber, our judge, to pick a winner. And sometimes he's like, I cannot just choose one of these. So he often picks a runner-up, and in this case, a couple of honorable mentions. So well done, Kimberly. And Brooklyn, do you want to tell us a little bit about Kimberly and her story, or
Definitely.
their story?
Yeah. So Kimberly Aslet is a medical librarian from Northern Ontario, mostly.
Oh, I think that's Anne.
No, I think it's...
Oh.
It's Kimberly, yeah.
Oh, it is? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. She's also a writer who explores small moments and big feelings in her short fiction, which you'll see shortly. In the past few years, she's been able to experience amazing moments, from dog sledding on Lake Labarge to riding a hot air balloon over Cappadocia, Turkey. And as Jen mentioned, this story was an honorable mention for last year's Bumblebee Flash Fiction Contest, and it's called The Echo of Light Footsteps on Parchment. A large book with parchment pages is lying on the oak table, and you could reach out and touch it with a light finger if you wished. On it is a list of deaths in the parish, a parish that exists in name only now on maps. The lettering is curled like tendrils of plant material, dried and falling to dust. The deaths are from fever, falls, apoplexy, trampling, cholera. The deceased are young mostly. Around the letters and numbers that mark their lives, there are marks on the edges of the page, like a tiny, furry creature has made its way around the stories of the deaths, walking through the ink of the lives before it dried. It might be hard for you to imagine the time when the parchment was half blank, the year of mud roads and coaches and precarious life. In that year, a barefoot child followed a man on his journeys to the various barbers and doctors and parish churches where the bodies were taken. The child could follow the flowing black cloak easily, as it was brushed clean and made of tightly woven wool and a much better quality than the occupants of most streets would likely wear. If you dreamed this man, you would see his home as a place of stone and wood and tapestry and books, of food prepared by a cook and fires lit by a thin girl who would later eat from a wooden bowl in the kitchen. The man with the dark cloak was one who carried the ink and blotting cloth and the book of parchment, carried the authority of money and status and education. In a sad moment, only months before, he had witnessed the name of his wife being written by the priest, who blessed her and the still mound of her belly in her shroud. Her name was with those first few who died of this cholera outbreak. The child who followed past the market and the animals had received no education, but shared hot, simple meals in his dwelling until his parents had died. The father of a fall years before, and the mother of the recent disease. The child was often cared for by neighbors and slept inside most nights. In the daylight hours, the child would wander the streets, looking for small treasures, like coal that could be burned or a stick in the shape of a person. The clothes on the child looked too short, but not too tight. And I think I'll end it there.
Well, thank you, Brooklyn. That was a lovely reading. And isn't that an intriguing story?
It is. And it's, Kimberly's definitely right. She does explore a lot of big feelings and just these micro interactions.
Yeah. And it's so intriguing. It's got this sort of, it's got a historical / fantasy feel, but it's just it's a very light touch, like the light footsteps. And yeah, you can definitely see why it made the short list and why Bob chose it as a notable, because just a very gentle touch. It's not too heavy. It's, even though the subject material is dark, but it's a lovely story to read. So I'm just waiting for Monica Wang. I just messaged them and they said shriek. I think trying to get over into the channel. So, and here we are, Monica.
Hello.
And Monica, sorry, I didn't ask what your pronouns were.
She, her, and they, them are both
Okay.
with me.
All right. So let me get the next slide up. So Monica's story is The Switch Fairy. And I don't really want to say too much about it because it's just it's a wonderful voice. And I'm sure as Monica starts to read it from it, you'll see why we nabbed it. So I'll just give you a little bit of Monica's background, though. So you've published fiction before in Southward and other publications, and you've received offers for creative writing MAs from all over. University of Kent, Exeter, and you grew up in Taiwan and Taipei and Vancouver. And you spent the past 4 years in Germany and the Netherlands. Where are you now?
Exeter.
Exeter. Okay. So you've just been all over the globe.
Not intentionally, but it's just how it ended up.
Oh yeah, but what a rich background for a writer. Like what a gift that is to be able to have a glimpse into all those different cultures, and you're going to be able to draw on that for the rest of your life, even if you never move again.
I hope so.
All right. So rather than talking about the story first, I think you should just launch into doing a little reading, and then you can talk about the inspiration, because I don't want to give away the impact of this. So,
okay.
All right. So thanks, Brooklyn. I'll bring you off the stream now.
Thank you, Brooklyn.
And anybody having problems backstage, tag Brooklyn and she'll be able to help you. Okay. It's all right.
Also, not to overpromise, but one of my friends said this is the only fun story I've ever written.
Oh, well, I'm glad we got it.
The Switch Fairy. Please stop pulling on that, the small voice whined. My leg. I stopped knitting. I lived alone. Someone must have hidden their phone or themselves in my apartment. Readjusting my grip on my needles so they could pierce and intrude her eyes, I checked the sofa, under the sofa, around the coffee table. The bare floor? Nothing. I did not own much furniture. The voice grew louder. Ow, ow, you're still pulling. You're giving me rope burn. Rope? I kicked over the bag of yarn I just brought home and crushed the nearest ball in one fist. Nothing. The next ball? Nothing. Next? Nothing. Something crisper than discount yarn poked through the strands in between my fingers. Long, thin insect wings. Ew. I tried to hurl the yarn across the room. It flopped a meter away, weightlessly. From beneath the yarn, a tiny muffled screech. My leg. Had you freed me properly, I would have made today a most glorious, luck-filled day for you. But now, a humanoid daddy long legs, crawled out of the yarn. What are you? What is this? Are you, I squinted. Perhaps the bug comparison would offend. A yarn fairy? Even at this distance, the disdain was obvious in their face. You think I came from filthy polyester? Hey, no need to be a snob. I just meant I don't exactly have a garden in here. Why are you in my apartment? Having pushed the tangled section of yarn down to their ankles, the fairy stretched. The ligaments in their wings collapsed inward, stretched outward. They looked into my eyes. I didn't expect to be so intimidated by something I could crush with a clay yarn holder. Yeah, the lumpy clay yarn holder. I made it myself. You don't have much of anything in here, not even heating. Without breaking eye contact with the judgy bug, I crab walked to the window and closed it. So much for fresh air. Since you inquired about my origins, said the fairy, I don't think I was born mere hours ago in a smile of pure joy. Before my wings could fully unfurl, you bumbled by with your cheap yarn and caught me by the leg. Me walked by. Was this at the department store? When a child gazes upon the object of their fervent desire, when a smile blooms across their face, I thought of the other shoppers, their blank or annoyed, or somehow both blank and annoyed faces. Burst into existence like a brilliant star. I, a delicate, the fairy clawed at the tangles. Dew dropped, spit flew from their lips. Rose. So you're a gaming console fairy? A Wetzel? Guy in the computer section yelling about missing pre-orders? His smile? His smile and joy. Guy in his 30s getting a toy from his elderly parents while giving minimum wage retail workers a hard time? Was I the judgy bug? No, I couldn't possibly be. The voice rose to mosquito pitch. Will you free me or not?
That's fabulous. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with that story.
I think my friends are complaining that I only ever write sad or depressing stories. And it was almost Christmas, so I figured I should write something festive and fun for once. And this was my best effort.
Well, it's definitely fun. I don't know about festive, but it's definitely fun. And so, if your stories are all usually sad and depressing, what do you usually write?
I think similar things, short stories. I don't personally find them depressing, but I guess my friends are easily depressed, maybe.
So what are you working on now?
Besides the MA, I'm working on my first novel. There's been I've had a full manuscript request, but I
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, thank you. I don't feel like I'm ready to send it off yet, so I'm trying to work on that, and also still writing short stories while I'm on the side.
And what's the novel about?
It's a loosely fictionalized book of the year I spent working as a security guard all over Vancouver.
Oh, cool.
Work at the prison, the central library, the outdoor pool that's on the beach. Oh, sorry, I forgot you're from Vancouver. It's beach.
Right, First Beach, yeah. Awesome. That well, I definitely want to read that when you feel it's ready, and when it's when it's out there. But that would, yeah, I'm sure you had a lot of crazy experiences.
Yeah, because I only worked graveyard shift, so
Oh boy,
I think that's usually when the most unusual things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at the park board in Stanley Park for a few summers during university. That was day shift, and that was crazy enough.
I also had one shift in Stanley Park at night, so
yeah,
that was fun.
And so, what's your usual process for writing? Like, how do you come up with your ideas? And
I think usually if I have a weird dream or meet some people I really don't like and eventually plan to write about, or overhear a weird conversation, I write it down in a document or a notebook somewhere. And when I have time, I try to go back and pick out a few to develop.
Yeah, weird dreams is pretty good inspiration if you have good dreams.
Yeah, they're very useful. Also,
That's
there's
awesome.
this one time I overheard someone saying raccoons were invented in the 70s. So I'm hoping to make use of that.
That's good story fodder right there. And you're working on your MA at the University of Exeter?
Yes.
Yeah. And is that a creative writing MA or?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So you should get some good workshopping for your novel and
yeah. I've already workshopped a few chapters, but I'm hoping to do a lot more, I guess.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I am totally looking forward to seeing what more your career produces. It's always great to get writers sort of just at the beginning of their career, because then we see them as, now the magazine's been around for almost 8.5 years, and like we're getting to see some of those writers we published early on like go on to win Hugos and Nebulas and things like that, and it's just kind of awesome. So
I used to read copies of Pulp at the Vancouver Writers Fest and just go through it, and I'm like, how do people write stories? How do people do this? And it's pretty exciting that I have a story in Pulp now.
Oh, that's great. So you were one of our early readers.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome to the author side of Pulp. We're
so much.
Delighted to have been able to publish you. I'm just waiting for Lulu Keating to come back on. She sound checked earlier. So Brooklyn, if you're backstage, maybe you can track her down. But that sounds like might as well be time to do another prize draw. So Monica, I'll let you go backstage. Your camera held up fine.
Yay.
No problems there. So
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reading, and hope to chat at the end of the show.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. So while we're waiting for Lulu to come back, or not Lulu, yeah, it was, yes. While we're waiting for Lulu to come back on, I was going to take a look at one of the other authors that couldn't make it, was Krista Jane May. And their story is The Fate of Chickens. So Krista Jane is born in Manitoba and currently splits her time between Saskatchewan and Vancouver Island. She's had work appear in the Antigonish Review, Sheldon Curry Fiction Prize competition, and she was shortlisted for the 2020 Raven Short Story Contest. So it's a name we've come to know. And she was also shortlisted for the Fiddleheads 2020 Fiction Contest. And her story, Tiny Sores, was longlisted for the 2021 CBC Short Story Prize. So she's an author who's just really getting a lot of prize accolades out there. The Fate of Chickens is a really interesting story. It's very poignant, but also, not sentimental, and earthy and different. So basically, it's a memoir, and I'm just trying to find it in the document here so I can talk about it intelligently before I read. So it's a reminiscence, of youth, which is what part of the poignancy. But the voice is so distinct, and so different. So let me just give you a little snippet of Fate of Chickens by Krista Jane May. Plucked chicken, she told William as he headed up the stairs to bed. Not loud enough for him to hear, of course. He'd only accuse her of being drunk, which she likely was. He was probably already disgusted, but it didn't take much these days. Or perhaps this was worse, he wasn't thinking about her at all. Plucked chicken, she whispered to the empty street from her perch just inside the enclosed front porch. The door cracked open just enough to accommodate the slender bare legs she extended across the wide top step, and her need to inhale the thrill of a near-tropical early autumn rainstorm. Plucked chicken. Where had that come from after all these years? It could only have been the sight of those two women strolling down the otherwise deserted 11 p.m. pavement, rainwater rushing stream-like on either side of the slightly raised debris built-up center where they'd walked in a cursory attempt to stay dry, avoiding, of course, the elevated and therefore relatively puddleless sidewalk that flanked only her side of the street. Distorted by the filter of the squalling rain mist beneath the spotlight of the lone overhanging streetlight, their image briefly conjured a moving Renoir-esque painting, this vision-like emergence of the two animated figures, as though entering a stage, had submerged Lorena into a painful longing that threatened to simmer on ache. Yet well past middle-aged pair, one scrawny in a jaunty, massive, flower-embellished flapper cap, the other portly with long white hair lifting in the gusts that rendered futile the umbrellas they were fighting to control, couldn't be more incongruous to the two young women who insisted on intervening, their superimposed image crowding Lorena's agitated state of consciousness. Where are you now, Muriel? Plucked chicken? It was so real. The warmth of her gentle voice, the concern in Muriel's intense black-rimmed Viking eyes. Lorena picked up her wineglass from the veranda floor and took a sip, savoring the images that had arrived as though loosened and torn by swirling wind from a page of Time's scrapbook, to settle, then lift again as she tried to gather them all at once and hold them to her breast in sudden need. Muriel, tall and slender, a river of long, dark blonde hair, so refreshingly unadulterated in those big hair-crazed times, spilling in tributaries over that well-worn, studded black leather jacket that was as natural a part of her as her permanently wind-burned cheeks. And I'll stop there. But you can see, and I probably don't read it as well as the author did, would have, but you can see the rhythm of her language, and it's sort of this rolling language that just takes you into the story and into the past and sort of drifts you into the main character's past. So it's just like a lovely guided trip through of a fictional memoir. So do check out that story when you get a chance. And I think we've got Lulu backstage now. Yes, we do. So I'm going to add Lulu to the stream. Welcome, Lulu.
Thanks for your patience. I got all confused because our time did not, we didn't do daylight saving time this year, so we're an hour different from.
Oh, really? Okay.
Anyway, I'm in the loop.
Let's see. I'm just going to scroll back here to my other page. So you're up in Dawson. And your bio here says you've been writing short fiction screenplays since the early 80s. So, and you've won screenplay competitions for Klondike Kalahari, and at the Vancouver International Women in Film Festival just last year. And you were shortlisted for the Yukon Flash Fiction Contest. And you've been published Geist, Globe and Mail, North of Ordinary, What's Up Yukon. And you're originally from Nova Scotia. So that is a very long way from Dawson.
I was in denial for a long time about moving to Dawson.
Were you?
Oh, yeah. I was far from family, but here I am.
Yeah. I hear it gets into people's blood, though.
Yeah.
Once you're up there.
It's like a virus. It infiltrates you and takes over.
Yeah. It's like the hantavirus that makes you love cats, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The one.
It's how the city tricks you in and keeps you there. Yeah. So you're a frequent contest winner, and this story was also an honorable mention for the Bumblebee Flash Fiction Contest, the Pale Pony Express. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
It's borrowing on a lot of stories that I've heard here in Dawson. There are just so many wild and wonderful things that happen. So some of these particular things about if you make the mistake of letting anyone know that you're making that 6-hour drive down to Whitehorse, they're there with their list. That's what it was based on, a list of, could you just, while you're there, pick up this, and then you've got errands for so many people. One of the ones that I'd like to write about at some point, it's actually in the novel I'm working on, was a fellow who was told, can you go pick up this loon? It was late in the fall. All the waterways around Dawson, the rivers and lakes were all frozen up already. And so he had to bring that loon down to put it in some open water farther south on the Yukon River.
Wow. That's quite the request, and yeah, I can see how that when you're so far away from everything, any trip is you're gonna do as much as you can. So, do you want to give us a little snippet from the story?
Sure. It's about 3 minutes a read. Should I read it all? Or?
Yeah, you can read it all.
Okay, you can cut me off if it goes too long. Okay, this is called Pale Pony Express. The little girl asked me for the story. Her blonde ringlets hang to her shoulders. She's old enough now to hear the truth. I reel myself back to the woman I was before she took root. It had been 20 days since we'd talked about it. Time was running out. I suggested, let's take a run down to the Pale Pony. That's what we call Whitehorse. Rory said, we only got 2 days off. Do you want to spend 6 hours each day driving? 5, I told him, if you let me behind the wheel. He wouldn't. Even when you live off grid, word gets around. The law of the North is that you can't refuse to help others. They came to us with their lists. Sandy needed a fan for her stove and a hard drive. Rebecca needed pasties for her burlesque. Sarah needed roofing nails. I mean, really, Sarah? Your roof is under 3 feet of snow. We were ready to go when Katrina pulled in, blocking us. The bed of her pickup truck had a custom-built dog carrier. 3 dogs stuck their heads out of round cubby holes. Katrina wouldn't get to it right away. She introduced the dogs. Nobody will adopt them until they're fixed. She'd go herself, except she's too busy at the shelter. It's all lined up at the vet clinic. She held out the truck keys. There was only one cassette in the truck. After 100 kilometers of Hank Snow, we shut it off. We finally talked about the stillborn, Gertrude. The doctor told us we were unlikely to lose another, but we saw death everywhere. The Klondike Highway was bruised with nightmare landmarks, where I slid off, where Rory crashed. Almost there, we skidded on black ice and bounced off a snowbank. When we finally arrived, we were grim and exhausted. After the errands were done, we agreed we would talk. My pregnancy. We would decide if we'd go through it all again. It was still early enough to make a decision. The damn vet clinic ordered us to come back in 4 hours to pick up the dogs. The pert assistant explained, "This is a freebie for the Dawson shelter. You can't expect us to keep the dogs overnight." Try sneaking 3 drugged-up coneheads into a pet-free motel. I distracted the desk clerk while Rory smuggled the dogs, kept us awake all night with their restless wandering. As soon as we fell into deep sleep, they needed out. And that was the start of another nightmare day. The Malamute couldn't jump into the truck bed. Rory lifted him. The dog twisted, nipped Rory, and ripped his stitches. Back to the vet. By the time we made it home, Rory and I weren't talking. In bed, we chilled each other. In the morning, Rory touched my belly. My hands covered his, softening, clinging, crying. Tenderness reignited. We melted into each other. And that, little girl, is how you came to be.
That is such a delightful story. I mean, I felt myself just tearing up a little bit at the end. It's like, and I love your language in it. I love, how you chilled each other in bed that night.
Thank you.
It's so understated and so powerful. And, the beauty to writing to flash fiction is that you have to be so sparse with your words, and it's sometimes so much more powerful to be sparse with them rather than to overwrite. And I think you did that beautifully.
Well, thanks. It's really nice discovering the flash fiction, the limit of whatever, 500 words and less, or the new Bumblebee contest is 750. Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really, it's like making short films as opposed to features.
Yes, yeah. And it seems like, in a way, it's like, it seems like, well, what did the dogs have to do with the pregnancy and all that? But all that it's just this, it's a way of talking about what the emotions of the characters are and why they're that, without having to say, so and so was, we were feeling this way. It was just, it works just beautifully, and I'm so glad that came through the inbox for the last year's Bumblebee. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And what are you working on now?
That novel I mentioned, Klondike Kalahari, it's been in the works for many years, and I'm just rewriting it. It was about an African woman who becomes stranded in the Yukon. And because of the question of cultural appropriation, I'm going to abandon that lovely African character and replace her with a maritimer who comes to the Yukon and gets stranded in the Yukon. So it's still going to be a coming-of-age, fish-out-of-water story. And a lot of the same story will be there with just a different premise.
Right. It's funny because I read an article in the Monitor written by, I think, the Caribbean, possibly. I can't, a while ago, a Caribbean writer who ended up, via Toronto, ended up, and I think it was either the Yukon or the Northwest Territories, but writing about that very thing, the cultural clash and how it got into her blood as well. So
yeah, neat. Look for that.
Yeah, I think it was the Monitor, which is the CCPA's sort of magazine, and I think it came out in 2020. So if I can find it, I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
I often don't. Often magazines go into the recycling, but sometimes they end up in piles somewhere. So while I've got you on, I'm going to do another reminder about this year's Bumblebee. So if you want the chance to get your fiction read and judged by Bob Thurber, who is the master of flash fiction, and a chance to win $300 or even just a chance for regular publication in the magazine. Get those entries in before the 15th of February. And I'm just going to do another prize draw while we're here. So this one is number 2. Who is number 2? Actually, the question is, if anyone's watched The Prisoner, who is number 1? And the answer is, you are number 6. If you haven't watched The Prisoner, go and find it. Bizarre television. All right. So number 2 is, it's our next author. So Derek, you win. Let me see what you win. You win an ARC, advanced review copy of The Extra by Mel Anastasiou, which is coming out soon, I promise, but you will get that ARC very soon and get a chance to read it before everybody else does. So let's bring Derek on. There you go.
I'm so excited.
A winner already.
I just won. This is great.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lulu. And I'll see you backstage and hope you can hang around for a backstage chat afterwards.
Thank you, Jennifer. Bye.
Bye. So, Derek, first of all, I did not ask how to pronounce your last name. So
yeah, just as it sounds, Salinas Lazarski. Just
okay.
as it looks. You could. Yeah.
So Salinas Lazarski. Okay.
Salinas Lazarski. Thank you, Jen, so much for having me, including my story, the work that you did, Genevieve did. It was just so delightful working with you all. It's gorgeous. I'm so excited. I can't stop talking.
Well, you did promise you'd gush on the launch, so that's okay. So you're based in Chicago, and you're a writer and educator there.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been in several magazines, Curbside Splendor, Portage, Oyster River Pages, and podcasts as well. So your bio says that your work nosedives into the construction of meaning, the extraordinary in the everyday, and the limits of the heart and mind.
It sounds good, but it's a little.
I think it's pretty accurate.
Thanks. Thank you.
So this is a fascinating story, and it reminds me, like, in many ways, it reminds me of classic science fiction, like the stuff that I used to read in Omni or fantasy and science fiction back ages ago, sort of Robert Silverberg era. But yet it is also very modern and very it's I don't want to use terms like postmodern or anything like that, but it's definitely, I wouldn't think that it is an older story. It's very cutting edge and up to date, and yet has that sort of taste of the classics too. So I like that blend in it. You want to tell us a little bit about it and how you wrote it and what inspired it?
Sure. I mean, it was kind of a crazy journey. I grew up, middle class, white, suburban in the western suburbs of Chicago, and so I really trained around a lot of my writing in that experience, in the blue collar experience, while then trying to just go as bizarre as I can at the same time. And this had a couple different inspirations to it. First of all, I follow one of the writing podcasts I love. Is called Writing Excuses. They're very short, great for writers of the craft. They had an episode called The Unsexy Side of Space. They interviewed 2 budget analysts at NASA, and I have a very good friend who works at NASA too. But the budget analyst, the homework at the end of the episode was, write an interesting story about a budget analyst, and they're all joking, and I never did, but that one stuck in my head for some reason. So that's one piece. And then another piece is my friends and I have been big players of the fantasy card game Magic the Gathering for many 20 years. We have this large box of about 5,000 cards we play out of. And one night I was like, shuffling just takes so much time. I was like, what if we had a big machine that could shuffle the whole box? And then what if that machine could shuffle every card everywhere, like just go off the deep end right away? So this was another piece, and these ideas were floating in my head for quite a long time. I'm also an administrator in higher education, so I manage a lot of big budgets and projects, and I am no stranger to the frustrations and in some real ways dehumanizations of giant bureaucracy, which is what Elliot is dealing with, and I felt when I was Elliot's age, just like college. So I had all these different pieces, and I was just working on. Wrote about 10 stories last year during the pandemic, and this was one of them. And the last conceit of it, which is kind of what is going on, I had to come up with that myself. So it was like kind of these three pieces, and I do that sometimes where it's like sometimes you have really interesting pieces like Monica said earlier about raccoons being invented in the 1970s. That's brilliant. And like if you have another idea as a writer that so has nothing to do with that, sometimes if you can figure out a way to stitch them together, that can create something beautiful you never knew was there. So I'm not going to say really what the story was about, but those are some of the underpinnings of how it came to be.
Well, you definitely managed to write an interesting story about a budget analyst. So that was
Well, thank you.
And yeah, it's got just enough of the right amount of sort of the dry this is his job sort of thing, and and then it gets weird, and then it comes back down, and then it gets weird, and it's like it's just a beautifully balanced story that way.
I think the best science fiction is the stuff that's totally grounded in reality that we can feel, and then it takes us on this trip, and we love like going on the roller coaster, but keeping us grounded. That's what hooks us emotionally, and that's what really the best stories do.
Yeah, like when I was reading it, this is just like a tiny little part of my mind. It's like, is this possible? And it's like, and that's great science fiction to me. It's like, is this possible? Yeah, maybe.
I think to your point, I have been recommended the TV show The Prisoner from the 60s that you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard about that show, that's got a similar feel where it's like this like very grounded situation that I've heard. I haven't watched it, but I want to. That kind of like goes off the rails. And that's the kind of stuff I like reading and writing, engaging.
Yeah, it's very weird, and it's very 60s. Like it's totally 60s.
Cool.
But when it is classic, and it is very ahead of its time. So why don't you give us a little snippet here of the magic show?
Right. All right. She's got me. There's my card up there. Mel, the art is gorgeous. I'm so in love with this magazine right now. Thank you all for being here, for listening to me. And this is going to be from the beginning of The Magic Shuffling Machine. My sister Kelsey moved in with me the day before the project was assigned. Initially, I thought living with her was going to be fun. Pizza and beer and movies every night. Then, a week later, I had no control of the television, and the fridge was filled with vegan cheese. What could I do? Her super successful, pompous cellist husband, back in that big Philharmonic, dumped her second chair flute for the first chair clarinet. Couldn't let her move back in with mom and dad. Mom was still seasoning the cast iron skillet every day out of calcified routine, and Dad would have her sanding cabinets in the garage. Better she moved from the city to a big Midwestern suburb than to a boring rural one. Also, I had no excuse. For the 4 or so years before Kelsey moved in, my days had been spent analyzing budgets for Carnetica, while at night I was parked at the computer escaping in fantasy RPGs and falling down message board rabbit holes. And when I could kickstart my motivation, plowing ahead on the murder mystery library. That's when Research Project 916-00-3871 landed in my department queue. All I wanted was a slow Monday, to leave the cube as little as possible. But first thing in the morning, there it sat, a new budget line, lurking there beneath my other departments like a whitehead pimple. Plastics, domestics, auxiliary, and, God's be damned, Research Project 916-00-3871. Clicking it didn't expand into any detail. The explanation field held only 2 words. That's it. No lengthy abstract full of molecules and polymers, no citation list, no inscrutable description. The 2 words in the explanation field were this: occurrential interdeterminism. A Google search yielded nothing. I swiveled to the other cubicle and tapped Benny on the shoulder. He's the other budget analyst here. Failed out of seminary. Smoked too much weed. He leaned over and squinted. Could be anything. Slush fund, pet project. They throw stuff like that on me all the time. They did. Most new budgets went to Benny, who, despite being 10 years older than me, was less trustworthy because, I guessed, he had a big bushy ponytail. He managed budgets for the long list of research projects at Carnetica, while I watched the budgets of the 3 major aforementioned departments of plastics, domestics, and auxiliary. Plastics makes parts you don't know exist for your dishwasher and car. Domestics makes department store chaff like candles, pillows, and avocado peelers. Auxiliary has a few special projects embedded in it, like the off-track bedding machines we make shelves for, but otherwise comprises some other random stuff and all the overhead, like my pedestrian salary. I showed him the explanation field. Occurrential interdeterminism. Whatever that was. He shrugged with great difficulty. Then his interest drifted back to the SETI scanner on his right monitor. The scanner was more than a hobby. He told me he went to bed every night sending thoughts to the aliens because he was fairly certain they were listening in on him and coming soon. But what about the number, I asked. The number of the project. But when he said what, I said never mind. My eyes were fixed on it. 916-00-3871. It was my social security number.
That is awesome.
I love that story.
I had to thank you. It's just like the first part. I had to look up and north of the border, you all call it a social insurance number. And so I'm happy to have learned that today.
That's a great place to leave it, because now all our listeners are going, oh yeah, what does that mean? Right? But it's just a great voice, don't you agree, Mel?
I absolutely do. And I just want to say, like, Jen is a great number person. She also deals with the money side of the magazine. I am so ungifted with numbers, and I loved your story. It was like reading about somebody's great pianist or rocket launcher. So just awesome. Such fun.
Thank you so much. I was overjoyed to see in the proof that we got, Mel, your sketch of the cubicle artwork before. It took me a second. I was like, oh, that.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you like it. It was in honor.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take a moment just to read some of the comments that have been coming in. Normally, I read these as they go along, but I just haven't been keeping track. But Mary Rykov, who is our proofreader and sometimes a copy editor as well, said, "What a delivery, Derek." And
Thank you.
Yeah, Monica
Great reading.
commented, "I love both the inside illustrations and the cover." And yeah, I will talk about the cover a bit more. Everybody's saying like really enjoying, a lovely reading Lulu, captivated. So Steve Chang wrote that it's very cool how Monica differentiated between her characters' lines, not by doing voices, but by making faces. Yeah,
awesome.
and excellent reading. Looking forward to the entire issue. So there's all sorts of authors. Be sure to check in the comments on YouTube just so you're seeing all these kudos that are coming in for you. So Derek, what are you working on now?
I am working on my third novel. Maybe hoping this one is going to get published. It is a rock opera about working retail.
Love it.
With some lots of video games and psychological dissociation thrown in there. So yeah, similar. If you like the story, I'm trying to capture the vibe of that a little bit with this. I love these stories, the kind of the offbeat satires that really engage you, kind of with their cleverness and their voice, but then you can't stop thinking about them later. I love reading stuff like that, and so that's what I'm going for.
I'd love to read that novel.
Yeah, me too. I just realized that you're writing. Reminds me of a book came out sort of in the 90s called The Atrocity Archives. And I'm trying to remember the author's name. So if anybody is out there in YouTube land, feels like Googling it and typing that author name in the chat. But it's that similar voice. But I think I actually enjoyed yours even more, maybe because it's not set in the 90s.
I'm writing it down. These are literally novel notes that I'm writing down right now. So thank you.
Now again, we've got two more authors that couldn't be here today, and unfortunately, they were the winners of this year's Raven contest. So I've brought Mel on to talk about the winner and read a snippet from her. So Derek, we'll see you backstage. Thank you again for that fabulous reading.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Pulp. So glad to be here. This has been great.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you. So Mel, why don't you tell us a little bit about the winner of this year's Raven contest?
What a terrific story. And there were so many great stories, weren't there, Jen?
Oh, there were, yeah.
I'm feeling quite honored to get to present this one. The Art of Ironing, which caught all of us right here. And it's when I was reading it, I mean, I've spent a lot of my life trying never to iron anything. And just remembering that smell of hot sizing and steam and everything else that goes with ironing, along with Natalie's take on it too. And Natalie Harris Spencer is an English writer and an editor, and she lives in America. And she's had her work appear in the Archipelago Fiction Anthology, Culture Club, The Dark City, as satirist, Stone Coast Review, and many more. And she was selected by Oyster River Pages as one of their emerging fiction voices, and the winner of the 2021 Hummingbird Flash Fiction Prize, which we're seeing here today, The Art of Ironing. She said she loves surprise in fiction. Yeah.
Don't we all? Yes.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's so clever to be able to set up a surprise rather than just springing aliens out of the sky. It's really clever art. And here's the art of ironing. Just a little bit from Natalie Harris Spencer's winning story of the hummingbird this year. Some flat afternoons, I can smell the starch from my childhood. It comes to me by accident, the high whiff of linen on the bend of a washing line, the dense threat of rain overhead. With this smell, I'm 14 again, back in my parents' house, miles and miles away, watching my mother doing the ironing. There's a shut glass door between us, behind which exists a green dome terrarium. I peer through the glassy orb at my mother. A distortion? She's a rainforest mirage, her mechanical ironing arms slick hot and hazy. My mother irons things that don't need ironing. Hankies, socks, sheets. There's no art to what she's doing, this procedural flattening of creases, this daily smushing. I think she must really love the monotony of ironing. You'd have to love something that pointless that much.
Isn't that great?
Story.
What a line, eh?
Yeah, you have to love something that pointless that much.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, Natalie was the winner of the Raven, and we're really sad she can't be here today. But maybe she'll be able to come on at a future launch with a future story. And now I'm going to bring on another surprise guest. So we've got another one of our editors, Melissa.
Hello.
Hi, Melissa.
Melissa Gruger is. If you listen to our podcast, oops. I'm going to get rid of this. It's just taking up too much room. If you listen to our podcast, Melissa is the brilliant sound engineer who puts it all together and edits it and deletes all our goofs and
It's quite genius.
all our levels and makes it sound good. So thank you for that. And the podcast is on hiatus at the moment, but we're hoping it will be up and running again soon. But you still can catch the last 5 episodes that aired on StreamYard. So go and take a listen if you want more storytelling and author interviews and things like that. So Melissa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've also been with Pulp for just over a year now, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I learned sound editing for doing this. I do yarn things. So the Monica story earlier was making me chuckle there. I'd love to find a yarn fairy. And I work with a communications company full-time and then do my writing and things with Pulp in what little free time I do have.
Great. And we're very grateful for it too.
It's fun.
And just so you guys know, like regarding contests, what we do when contests come, contest entries are all in. So after February 15th, for the current contest, we close off entries, we count the number, and we divide them up. And so you don't really know who will be your first reader. It could be Melissa, could be Mel, could be Brooklyn, Jen, could be me. So we have generally about half a dozen first readers looking through the stories. But we do make sure that all the stories get at least 2 looks so that if it just if you send something and it's just not to my taste, so maybe it has something in it that just triggers me, somebody else will be looking at that story blindly. So this is another important role that all our editors play is being those independent, unbiased eyes, so that every story has the best chance. And hopefully your story won't have that one irritating thing that irritates 2 of our editors, and you happen to get those 2 editors. But if it irritates 2 people, you probably need to rewrite it anyway. So yeah, and it's and it is like, it is such a pleasure to read these contest entries. Like it's wonderful to see. Sometimes we get contest entries that have been coming in for years. Like we've been running these contests since 2014, and we see them again, and they're always judged blind. So we take the names off when we do the first read. But then this name will, then once we've picked our short list, the names keep cropping up, and it's so nice to see these stories percolate their way up from long lists or the authors, not the same story, but percolate from the long list up to the short list and up to, runners up and winners. So Melissa is going to read a little bit from our Raven runner up. And do you want to tell us a little bit about Kevin Sandifer?
For sure. So Kevin's story is Out in the Sticks, and Kevin currently works as a capital projects accountant for the Champaign Unit 4 School District. Kevin was a runner-up in the Saturday Evening Post 2022 Great American Fiction Contest for his story Waiting. His stories have appeared or are forthcoming in Aftermath, Sunlight Press, Bethlehem Writers Roundtable, and the Bath Flash Fiction Anthology Restorative Factory Settings. He lives with his wife and 2 cats in Champaign County, Illinois, which is a magical place where miracles happen almost every day, and hardly anyone seems to find that remarkable. And I love that line.
Yes.
So I'm going to read a little bit from his story, Out in the Sticks. The first thing I notice is the heat. I can't remember why I ever thought it was a good idea to live in a desert town. There's no such thing as dry heat when your clothes are drenched in sweat. The bus stop has a shelter, but the canopy doesn't offer much shade. The plexiglass just magnifies the sun, and of course there are no trees, not in the desert. There's an old man waiting with me. He's so old that I'm surprised he can walk around without help, but there he is, standing straight and tall and proud, still independent. He's wearing a suit and tie, and I can't imagine how he stands it. The bus comes around the corner, and the old man asks if this one is ours. I tell him yes, it has to be, because it's the only bus that comes down the street, and it goes all the way out of town, all the way out into the sticks, and that's where I need to go. The bus stops and the doors open, and I swear I can see the chill spilling down the stairwell. And I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Absolutely.
And so let's please stay on while we do another prize draw.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just spraying my cat because she was attacking something in my apartment. It's fine.
Cats are welcome at this launch.
Right, yeah.
Like now we're up. I've had to increase the number of sides on my polyhedral die now. So we are at, and it is number 3, Brandon. So Brandon is Magusha and
that's their username in Discord, because that's what we were.
Okay. All right. So you have won. Now let me just check what that is. You have won the Stella bundle. So that is the first two books of the Stella Ryman and the Fairmount Mysteries series. So Stella Ryman and the Fairmount Mysteries, and The Labors of Mrs. Stella Ryman. And you will be receiving those ebooks soon, written by the wonderful and talented Mel Anastasiou.
Oh my goodness. I hope you enjoy it, Brandon.
And then let's give people, anybody else still wants to get their name in. I can go up to larger dice. So get anyone else wants to get their name in, I'll give you a little bit chance. We have 2 more prizes left. And we'll get to those very shortly. First, I just want to talk a little bit about there's the contest again. Don't forget to enter before February 15th. And I want to talk about our graphic short story in this issue. So this one is from H. Pueyo and Dante Luis. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing your names incorrectly. They are a couple. H. Pueyo is the writer and Dante Luis is the illustrator. And it's these lovely whimsical drawings. Now, I have put up the color version of this panel here just because the color is so beautiful and so delicate. And sadly, we have to print in grayscale for the magazine, so we do lose some of that. But you viewers can see these lovely, delicate colors for this quite very sad, very touching and beautiful story. And like those words, I was born out of a begonia in a world of bright green, hearing my human mother's laughter. What an opening line for a story. Even if this wasn't an illustrated story, I mean, Mel and Melissa, if you guys were reading that in the slush pile, wouldn't you just like, oh yeah, I want to read more?
Yeah.
I'd be spam texting people being like, this sounds amazing. You should probably read this.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Really
So-
interesting.
So just the writing by itself is really wonderful. It could stand as a short story on its own, and then we have this beautiful story from the writer, beautiful illustrations to go with the story. So do take a look at that in the magazine. It's well worth the read, and it's like most comics. I find I always have to read comics at least twice, sometimes 3 times, because the first time through I'm staring at the artwork so much I don't notice the words, and then the second time through the words sink in, and then the third time through it all meshes for me. So even reading, back in the day when I was reading, Chris Claremont X-Men comics, I would read them 3 times just to appreciate the art and the words separately. So all right, I am going to do the next prize draw now. Actually, no, I'll wait just in case there's some other people. So the last story is an excerpt from my forthcoming novel, which is the final installment of the Elenia Song trilogy. And you guys are going to get to hear it here first. Nobody else has seen this other than our editors. Yes, I know I said I'd get it out last year. Everything is behind. 2020 put us somewhat behind. 2021 shoved us way behind. But it will be out this year. I promise. Yes, Mom, I promise. So, she's the one who's nagging me the most, as mothers are entitled to do. And then this gorgeous illustration from Mel is in the magazine. And then this is actually a cover reveal. So this is almost the final cover. You see the beautiful painting by Melissa Mary Duncan, who's done all 3 paintings. Yeah, this is just lovely. And then the cover design is actually by my daughter Kate, who's fairly talented with illustrator and InDesign. So I will thanks, Melissa. I will let you go backstage again, and but you guys don't go away. I'll bring you off the stream, but don't go away. So we'll finish off. All right. So just a little bit of backstory. At the end of the previous book, Elena's Song Area, Elena gave up her search for her birth father, and she enlisted in the Brandishire Rangers, basically under her grandfather's command, but not known by her grandfather. And then 6 years later, she mustered out. She took a private commission from her grandfather which was a little weird. Took her and a handful of mercenaries, including her cousin Goff, into the wilds of Aburkor, which is the country on the other side of the mountain range from the Ilmar nations. They were tasked with exploring the Loth Gates, which were ancient arcana that could they were basically teleportation gates. And while they were there, they witnessed cataclysmic destruction of a gate, and Elenia and her companions vowed to prevent them being reactivated. They traveled through the hostile territory and back to the Ilmar. You can read all about that in Pulp Literature issues 27, 29, and 31, odd-numbered issues. It's not included in the novel, just because it's more of an adventure story and it doesn't fit in with the themes of the novel. But it's there in those back issues of Pulp Literature. And there is a if you look on the website, you can see where you can buy all 3 issues at a discount just to pick up that story. So verse 1 is Death Song. It was Reniel and I who washed and dressed Goffrey's body. After the 4 of us who remained took turns in pairs carrying him down the mountain pass. We had buried Allenbury in a makeshift cairn of stones and snow in Aburkor. It pained me that we could not bring her body with us, and now Goff would not make it home either. We were back in the Ilmar at least, but far to the north, in a mining town set low against the mountains of eastern Holt. He would not lie beside the heroes of Brandishire, where his heart belonged. His ribs stood out in the pale winter light of the candleless room. We were all thinner than when we had met, but the lack of warm blood beneath his skin made him seem as if he'd been a corpse for longer than these 2 awful days. As I sponged the dirt and blood of Aburkor from his body, I ran an inventory of his scars. The jagged tear on his calf he had earned in his first days as a squire, the whitened pucker above his clavicle from an Ilvani arrow, countless small and large lines crisscrossing his arms and legs, some old and some far too new, and of course, the one I'd given him, shallow but long, from the left shoulder to the right hip, so many years ago. Reniel watched me run my fingers along it, her sharp, pale brows sunk in a deeper frown than usual. Was she jealous still? What do you suppose that is from? She asked. I was taken aback. They'd shared a bed, these 2. How had she not seen it, not asked him? Did he never tell you? Her eyes narrowed. He would not say. It was me, I answered, memories clogging my throat with more sadness. Wishing... My document is jerking back and forth here. Memories clogging my throat with more sadness, wishing that thoughtless act had not robbed us of 8 years of friendship. I didn't elaborate, let her ask. But she said nothing, only continued her meticulous job of washing the left side of his body. When we had dressed and arrayed him, I took my father's knife and removed 2 locks of hair, one for her and one for me, to carry back to Rarin, along with the ashes from the fire we would build that night. And that is where I will leave that, and I will bring Mel back on.
That was wonderful, Jen. I was so sad to hear there was the last of it, but I'm always hoping there's going to be more. You never know.
You never know. I'm stuck in, for new material, I'm stuck in writing my 17th century spy novel, The Shepherdess. So
which is also brilliant.
That has to come first, and maybe I'll be able to revisit the world of the Ilmar at some other time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just such wonderful characters, wonderful adventure, and always the intrigue and surprises.
Yeah. And I just wanted to just go and take a look at, speaking of covers, I want to take a look at the original artwork for the cover of this issue. Bronwyn Schuster's Space Cat. Isn't that delightful?
Delightful. That's, Yes, it just raised your heart. You can feel your heart lift when you look at it.
Yeah.
In a science fiction manner. Yes.
And it seemed so appropriate for this issue where we had the feature story featuring space pinball. It's like you can just imagine that cat batting a little.
Well, the cat's always going to get into the game, isn't it?
Oh yeah, obviously. So that is Bronwyn Schuster. They're a local artist here in Vancouver. They do much amazing work. Check out their website. It's Nywn Art, NYWN Art. And just look out, because such varied, you just have these whimsical things like these. They've got a whole series of space cats. So there's a whole bunch of these ones. And then they've got portraits, which are really, beautiful, serious, studious portraits. A tarot card series that's quite more, I don't know, it's almost Art Deco-ish. And then there's the not safe for work stuff, like the Kama Sutra bunnies, which I absolutely adore, but we can never put on the cover. If you can imagine rabbits, cartoon rabbits doing the Kama Sutra, it's worth checking out, but perhaps not when your grandmother is in the room or your children, unless you want to answer questions. So do check out Bronwyn Schuster. And that is bringing us up to the end of this launch. It's I have enjoyed these stories so much, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. And the readings, oh my goodness, so good.
Yeah,
I was held
fabulous
enthralled.
bunch of readings.
Yes.
And here I'll put this up one last time just to remind everybody, get those contest entries in. Incidentally, the Bumblebee is the cheapest contest of the year to enter. The entry fee is only $15. If you had entered before January 15th, it would have been $10. So keep that in mind for next year. But you still get the $300 prize. So it's an easy entry. It doesn't cost a lot, and you don't have to write a lot. But you do have to edit a lot before you send in to really pare those words down.
It's so true. We often publish stories that we particularly liked that were outside.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we have done that in the past. Sometimes there's a story that we love, but just doesn't hit a chord with Bob, and we would just publish that at our regular rates. So
but Bob is so amazing. I am so thankful every year. How much
very grateful for Bob. Yes,
such a talented and generous guy.
Generous.
I love his work so much. It's always worth checking out. He's always got something new, doesn't he?
Yeah, and absolutely. If you are looking
to thrill you,
if you're looking to find out, what if you're writing to the judge, which I don't always recommend doing, but you can certainly study Bob's work, the way he can tell a story in such a concise way. He does a lot of 50-word stories, and those are brilliant. You can look those up. I can tell it's almost the end of the launch because Macaroni is sitting behind me and whining. I'm just going to move so you can see the wine. Here's the wine. Yes, we've got 5 minutes left. So yeah, do look up Bob Thurber. He's a master of flash fiction, and he will be your contest judge. He judges both the Bumblebee and the Hummingbird flash fiction contest, so well worth your time. Oh, and I was asked just to put a link up here to pre-orders for Corral. So let me find that. And I think we've given enough time, so we can do the final 2 prize draws. All right. straws. All right. So the next prize is the Elenia bundle, and that will be all 3 books in the Elenia Song trilogy. You'll get the first and second one and the arc of the third one. And that goes to number 9, Kate Heartfield. So congrats, Kate. You get to read my novels if you have time in between writing your own.
Good.
And
So
then
good.
and then the final prize is the Bumblebee package. So that is every single issue that we've had the Bumblebee winners in. So it's a collection of pulp literature, and it will be, I guess they come out in summer issues, so it'll be a collection of summer issues. So you can read all those winning stories. And that goes to Lulu Keating. So congrats, Lulu. Not that Lulu needs any instruction on writing winning stories, but I hope she enjoys them. So make sure everyone who's listening, make sure you give your email addresses to Brooklyn or Melissa. They will collect your email addresses so they can send you your prize. You want to, as I've got comments from the cover, I want a notebook and a shirt and a tote bag. We're not really doing our Redbubble store anymore, but I bet if you contacted Bronwyn, she would be able to do something like that. I think they have a Redbubble store. Or, if we could probably put something together if with Bronwyn's permission, if they wanted to share royalties or something like that. So maybe we'll ask them. It is a wonderful cover. All right. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. It's just been an absolute pleasure hearing all these wonderful readings from these great authors. And please join us backstage. You can chat with authors there and have a little more informal chat. And we will see you at the launch of the spring issue. Bye, everyone.
See you then.